So Devon,
Yeah,
you got to watch this movie for the first time because
that's right.
you said that it was a movie that eluded you
Yeah,
for so long.
I mean, I'm a Hawks fan. I've seen Come and Get It. I've seen like certain ones that I don't know, just whichever ones crossed my path, and for some reason, it just never happened. I'm a John Wayne fan too. I don't know how it, but yeah.
So how was that discovery?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, it's interesting because like certain parts of the screenplay were awesome, and then I had trouble with other parts, like where just some stuff got like repetitious, where it's just like I would just hear like a line, like just really kind of like the same kind of line, like but then there were really memorable parts, and the filmmaking is obviously incredible. Yeah, it's really great.
I think as a kid watching Hawks's movies, I think one of the things that attracted me to them was this group dynamic. Like everyone always says that Howard Hawks, that's what he's known for, is he's just got this like team dynamic in his films. And you see it in, like for me, the big one was The Thing from Another World, which I do consider a Howard Hawks movie.
Still haven't seen that.
But you just got these, it's always a group or a team of men. And then there's this woman that's thrown in there.
Right.
And rather than having the woman be, you know, not up to the task or like, you know, in conflict with what the men are doing, she's right there with them and never, like, she'll put up the fight. She doesn't put up with the, like, the garbage or the, you know, the fact that the men want it to just be the men and like the woman doesn't belong here. Like I think he was one of the great directors to kind of to do that. You know, you could look at some of the films and like, you know, some of them work better than others with modern eyes, but those are my takeaways, was that I just loved the Hawks woman, and it was always a brunette, and especially with like The Thing from Another World, like she in that film, like I was in love with her. I was like, oh my God, like that's what the idea of a woman should be. And I was thinking, like, it was funny because also when I was growing up around that same time, that's when Seinfeld was on. And I loved that group dynamic that they had. And Elaine felt like that type of female character. Like she didn't feel like whenever she was like with other women, she's like, I don't belong here. Right. And then when she was in the men, she's like, I can, you know, throw it around.
It's interesting. There's it's almost like Lee Brackett's place in that filmmaking group. And I read this quote about the reason Hawks like to work with Brackett is because she wrote like a man, which, you know, is kind of a product of his way of thinking and just kind of his, but which is obviously a product of the time. But you know, it's interesting because I was looking at the ages of all the different people involved, and she was 44, and everyone else from like across the board was 50 or older, like some late 50s, 60s, from Hawks to the rest, the whole cinematographer, editor, art director. I mean, it was just interesting that it's just like a group of veterans. And Brackett had still done a lot to that point, but it was like, it must have been, you know, interesting to just be part of that group of.
And that's somehow, like, that's the movie. Like, you got these veterans, and then, you know, the new kid comes along and wants to be part of the gang. And then you got
she was pretty, obviously, she was pretty accomplished at that point as well, right? I mean, The Big Sleep, I mean, she worked with Faulkner on screenplays, you know, I mean, it's like, obviously very accomplished.
Can you imagine those?
I can't, you know.
Like, what it would be like to be in a room with Faulkner.
To me, Faulkner is the greatest novelist of all time, so it's like, pretty cool. Honestly, I'm a big Raymond Chandler fan, not to get too off topic, but I'm a big Raymond Chandler fan, so it was like really cool for me to find out as a kid that there were these mashups of Faulkner and Chandler, you know? I just thought that was like the coolest.
And with To Have and Have Not, you know, he worked with Hemingway.
Exactly.
This to me feels like the same way that I look at North by Northwest is like the ultimate Alfred Hitchcock movie, where everything that Alfred Hitchcock's about, everything that he loves to deal with.
It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
From the scene he's being chased by the plane to the Mount Rushmore. I mean, it's all just so grandiose.
Yeah.
You know.
This feels like the ultimate Howard Hawks film. Like you said, like he's a director that's done so many different things. Like he did his Western, one of the great Westerns with Red River.
Oh, I love that.
He did, you know, the screwball comedies like Bringing Up Baby and His Girl Friday.
Yeah.
He does the film noir with Big Sleep. And then he has his adventure films like To Have and Have Not and Only Angels Have Wings. And he even throw in a war movie, Sergeant York.
Oh, yeah.
And like this feels like everything about those films that make them a Howard Hawks film is in this film.
He even manages to have screwball comedy in there as well. From I mean all of Walter Brennan's parts. Even though there's a great humanness there as well beneath the comic relief. You know what I mean? Just because he's a great character actor, but also the scenes between there were certain scenes between Wayne and Gonzalez that like. You know, when they weren't playing up the Mexican stereotype, which was unfortunate, you know, or just having the humor be based on that, there were these scenes that were really just great comic timing, which just reminded me of the banter of screwball comedy. Absolutely. And he found a way to inject noir into it as well. And actually, there was a back and forth in the hotel that I just thought was like, oh, this is like a Bogey and Bacall moment. And then I come to find out that he actually intentionally stole from himself. He said he loved to steal from himself and find new ways to inject the same themes and find new ways to tell the stories, you know, which I think is fine. I think it's great if you can, you know.
Well, and it's, you know, it's like when Hitchcock, like he's got the airplane scene, and it's like you can look at like Foreign Correspondent, there's the windmill scene. Right. And it's like he keeps on trying to do this set piece. Like he's like, I don't know why I can't get this right. Right. And then he puts Cary Grant running from an airplane. It's like, there we go, I got it.
I love the Carpenter quote that I heard about him saying that Hawks always knew where to point the camera in the right place at the right time, you know, and it's just, there's some truth to that, you know, it's like it really, you almost don't notice it sometimes until it really matters. And then you see this when they're walking through town and, you know, there's this, when you get to the part where Wheeler is shot, there's this jump cut to the angle from the perspective of the shooter. Or when they're in the saloon and they're looking for the killer, there's this jump cut to the shot from above, where you know, this sort of foreshadowing of what's about to happen there, and that's almost Hitchcockian in a sense as well.
Yeah, he never, like in all of his other films, like he would never do like a low angle shot like that, or a tilted or a skewed shot. Yeah. And you kind of get the sense of like, well, that's the story. Like I need to get this story point here, so the camera just has no other choice but to be here. Right. It's not like he's like, hey, look at this cool shot. I'm going to get this cool angle. Right. That's kind of like I like that. It's like a working man's director where it's just nuts and bolts. Like it's just dead simple filmmaking of, this is the story point I want to tell. That's
how Sidney Lumet always felt to me. He's very workmanlike, economical. Yep. But Hawks was working with Russell Harlan as well, who like had this whole kind of career of taking these B westerns and like elevating them to using, you know, just using ways to make it more aesthetically pleasing, you know. And I think he just had a lot of good people working for him, you know? I mean, it really, there was a very clear vision involved in the film.
You know, you mentioned like the screenplay and having, like there's moments when you're watching it where you feel like it's being repetitious, or like you feel like there's kind of like lulls. When I read about Hawks and what he was doing before making this movie, like he had this kind of like this bare bones storyline, this treatment that became Rio Bravo. And he went to the studios and he's like, oh, I want to make a Western. And they're like, Westerns are dead. Like, all the good Westerns are on TV now. Right. And like Gunsmoke, the Westerner, the Rifleman,
all that. Yeah.
Yep. So he was saying, well, what audiences like about seeing those on TV is they're episodic, like they can follow characters into different stories and go on to different tangents. And he's like, that's what I'm going to do with this screenplay. Like, the story of this is so simple. It's just, you know, they caught a guy, he's in the jail cell, there's guys that are going to be coming to break him out, and they've got to fight them off. But there's so much great character stuff in here.
It's a complete character study. Because to me, like you said, the very simplified, bare-boned plot allows you to not really get caught up in the plot.
Right.
So the subplots are on the main stage. And the opening scene really helps establish not only Dean Martin, who's incredible in the film, not only his just dilemma of desperation and really just being like, I mean, he's at the point where he needs help, and John Wayne knows it, and it really establishes their friendship and the strain of that friendship when you know it's like, listen, you know what's best for you. What can I really do for you more than what I've done, you know? And you find out about his glory days before that, when he was the fastest gunslinger around, and it's like, it really allows for all these redemptive character arcs throughout the film, from Ricky Nelson's character to Angie Dickinson's character. You know, it's really, it's great. It's this revolving door of character arcs, and it's really satisfying as a viewer.
Dean Martin's character, he's almost a character out of a noir film. Like, I think he's one of the most complicated characters in a Western.
He's world-weary and just disheveled, you know? And oh man, he
does all these great things too, like...
Oh, Hawks told him to beat his,
God.
and that it's really fascinating.
I think that's one of the great virtues of this film, because, you know, John Wayne, he's great, but he's almost, you know, underrated, underappreciated as an actor.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know...
He makes it look too easy.
Right.
People don't realize that his comfort in front of the camera is that's not a natural thing. That is an incredible thing to... It's the same thing with Bogey, man. They both got underappreciated because they made it look too easy.
Right.
You know?
And with him, like with John Wayne, it's like, he's gonna be John Wayne. He's gonna be John Wayne from beginning to end. But the way that he is with Dude, and that Dude gets to take over, like, it's almost his story.
Oh, when he goes, well, I think you can go through the front door again. Or like, you know, it's like he gives him his guns back, you know, and it's just like, oh.
I love the moment where he hits the guy with the barrel of his gun, and he's like, I'm not going to hurt him.
That's one of my favorite parts. I wrote that in my notes. I think it's hilarious that he says that after he hits a guy with a rifle. That's incredible. Yeah.
Gender roles. So, you know, like we mentioned, like, you know, you got these group of men, the way they are with each other, the way that they joke around with each other, they have all these little inside jokes with each other. Like, they know each other inside and out. They know how to work with each other.
Right.
So when one of them screws up or, you know, does something wrong, like, you feel it so much.
Oh, when
Brennan
accidentally shoots through Dean Martin's hat, and at that point, Dean Martin's kind of at a place where it scared him, but he's fine, and it actually scared Brennan way more. You know?
I love the line, like, he's like, you know, John Wayne comes in and he's like, you know, you're a little rough, aren't you? And he's like, well, you know, you almost killed me, I'm scared. And he's like, well, he's more scared.
Exactly. Oh, there's such a truthful, such a truth to Brennan's acting, even amidst all the, there's so many great details from the commentary on the Blu-ray about, like, teeth in or teeth out.
Right.
It's like, he's like, well, I want that, like, you know, really toothless kind of, you know, toothless wonder kind of guy. And it's like, but even amidst all that, all the stuff he's doing that makes you laugh, there's really, he lets you see the, you know, the pain and everything that he experiences as a human in his whole life. And I forgot, there's a moment where there's a building behind a building that says Sadlery, but in this one shot about 20 minutes in, all you see is the word sad, and it's in the background. And I mean, there's no possible way, I believe, that it's up to chance. Like, because it's so well framed. It just says sad, and it's behind John Wayne. And I thought, you know what? This is a sad family, and they are trying to, like, I think Wayne is the best at not showing it, right?
Right.
But I think there's a deep sadness to Brennan, and it's why he wants to be the clown, and he wants to, like, right? The clown always feels the most sadness. Look at Robin Williams. And I just thought it was interesting, and yeah.
Dean Martin has a lot of sadness to him too.
That's it. Oh, he's probably the big, you know, and I think Dickinson does as well, as much as she tries to, like, you know.
They're all kind of like, they're stuck in this. It's like with Chance, it's like he's the, you know, John Wayne's character, he's the one that's like, you know, I'm getting older, but there's no one else that's gonna do it but me.
Right.
I need the help, but it can't be at the sacrifice of seeing my best friends be killed because they can't handle it.
Well, because he wants to see them get their act together.
Yeah.
You know, it reminded me of LeBron James, to be honest. When I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know, he's just like, listen, I'm gonna do it myself if I have to, but I really want to see these guys around me that are maybe not the most desirable, right? But I know what's inside them, and if I can get them to elevate to my level, then we can get this done. You know?
I guess that's the thing. Like they're all stuck in like they're stuck in these roles that they know they're better than the roles that everyone else sees them as. And in the end, it's like seeing them accomplish that, and that being completely satisfying. Like, it's completely satisfying when this big action sequence at the end of the film, which is so well
the shootout was like the exchange.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
and
fantastic.
that, like, you know, like all of a sudden something like a shot, someone shoots someone, and they're like, "Who is that?" And he's like, "It's Stumpy. It's the guy I left behind." And knowing what it means to his character that he's doing that. It's like there's like such a great deep-seated love.
The line exchange between Stumpy and Chance when he says, he's throwing the dynamite, he goes, "What would you do if I wasn't here to throw it?" And he goes, "Well, I'd throw it myself." And he's like, "Well, I guess you would at that." It's like, it just shows so much about their relationship, honestly. I mean, and that's Hawks. The seamless ability to incorporate humor into realistic situations. It never compromises the reality of the scene, you know? I mean...
And it's just so much damn fun. And like Hitchcock, Hawks, and like even early Spielberg, like I know Spielberg watched this movie when he made Jaws, because you can see it in the camaraderie of the men, you can see it in the scene that they start singing. And with all of those movies, like even with like someone like Hitchcock with Rear Window, it's like they're dealing with such heavy things. Like people are dying, people are getting shot, and yet you're having so much damn fun. And how they keep that up in the air like that.
I guess Carpenter based Assault on Precinct 13 on this, and then his editing credit in the film is John T. Chance, which I didn't know. That's his pseudonym. Just so cool.
He's been quoted as saying, like, you know, whenever he's in trouble with a script, like he'll just think of Rio Bravo and he'll reappropriate it. Yeah. Like you see that with Assault on Precinct 13, but you also, like, I don't recommend it, but if you watch Ghost of Mars, it's that too.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guarantee Hawks had that film for himself. What was his film that he always went back to?
Right.
I know he took his own, you know, use his own work, but when you're that good, it's like, you know. But who knows who his? Do you know who his kind of big influences were?
For Carpenter?
Hawks.
Hawks. No, it's weird. Like, I know that, like, when Peter Bogdanovich interviewed him, I know he mentioned Ford a lot. And, like, he said that when he set up a shot in Red River, and it's a shot where they bury, I forget who they're burying someone, and then there's a cloud that comes over, and it, like, the shadow of the cloud washes over them as he's giving the sermon. And Bogdanovich mentions that, and he's like, you know, I really like that shot. Did you see the cloud there, and did you know that that was going to happen? And Hawks is like, well, yeah, we saw the cloud there, and I thought, you know, once in a while you'll get lucky and you get one of those John Ford shots. And he asked him, he's like, did you think of it as a John Ford shot? And he's like, yeah, you know, you're making a Western, you know, you gotta think of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they all kind of look to D.W. Griffith. I know a lot. I think, you know, I don't know how he would have done, like, his comedic work is so strong too. Like, even going back, I watched 20th Century.
Oh, that's a great one.
And, you know, out of nowhere, this John Barrymore performance that is just out of this world. Like, I felt like it was like the male equivalent to Norma Desmond. Like, it's just so operatic and so big and so funny. Like, I don't know how he would have done that without looking at someone like the Marx Brothers or Charlie Chaplin.
Well, yeah, you go to the ones that did it really well, and, you know.
That's what I always, like, you mentioned that. It's like, there's no, there's a wealth of knowledge of knowing, like, well, of course I know who John Carpenter was influenced by.
Right.
Because he'll talk about it.
Right.
But these guys are so, you know, close to the chest. Like, you never, you almost rarely hear them talk about, like, someone that they were influenced by, or someone that they were.
Because it's like there's different artists that some, you know, there's some, like, hip hop producers who have no problem telling you who they sampled for which record, for which beat. Then there's others who, like, don't ask me who I sampled. That's my business. And so I get it, you know, how it depends on how you, you know, some people, they don't want you to see the puzzle pieces. They just want, you know.
It's so hard. Like, like, whenever I'm making something or producing something, it's like I feel like I wear my influences on my sleeve.
Right.
And then there's some times where I'm like, you know, I should mention that I like this thing. It's like, oh, well, don't do that because that's going to give away the game.
Right.
Like, they're going to, like, be like, oh, we found you out. You're just nothing but a thief.
Right.
Well, but you can't help but do that.
There's two different ways that I was reading that Hawks reappropriated his dialogue from To Have and Have Not.
Yeah.
There's one part where Angie Dickinson says, you know, after the first kiss, she says, you know, it's better when two people do it.
Right.
And I think the line from To Have and Have Not was, it's better when.
Yeah, it's like it's better when you join me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then there's another one later where she says, it's in that final scene where she's trying to get him to, like, have a problem with what she's about to wear in this performance, and it's almost I play hard to get. It's like it's almost the exact same line. He just retools it, you know.
That's that thing where it's like, you know, like, somehow I think, like, as a director, it's like, it's not just having a vision, but it's having a consistency of vision, like, where they just can't help but do the same thing over and over again because there's something gnawing at them. It's like, I didn't get it quite right.
You knew it worked, and it's also like a little, like, bone you're throwing to the people that follow your work. I mean, I see no problem with it, you know. I don't think it's taking away from. Nothing's truly original. Like, you know, I mean, everything's going to have semblances of. That's a great thing about art. It's impressionistic, and it's like people influence each other, and I think it's great. And what it does is creates this giant kind of snowball of, like, that's what it is. It's like, and then you can, like, take little pieces out. It's all connected, you know.
This is a way tangent, but I just thought of it when you were thinking. So, So Bob Dylan in Girl from the North Country has the line, remember me to one who lives there, she once was a true love of mine. And Paul Simon has that same line in what is it, Sounds of Silence? Yeah. So, which came first?
Right.
And did he write that line and Paul Simon was like, I hate Bob Dylan, like that's just the perfect line, whatever, I'm taking it.
Right.
Did they have a communication about it?
Right.
It's like one of those things where I'm like, I don't even know if I want to know the answer. I just love that it's like these two like giants in the 60s had the same line shared between them. But that was a tangent. Music.
Yeah. Dmitri Tiomkin, yeah. I mean, I love the way he uses, I love the way Tiomkin uses music to elevate tension or to make you feel that there's the potential for conflict. I mean, it's very, or just to like accent it without you even really noticing it's there.
Right.
You know, it's so seamless to the point where I was reading that Sergio Leone for Fistful of Dollars told Ennio Morricone, like, I want, you know, Dmitri Tiomkin-esque music for this. It's like, clearly he was the guy for Westerns, pretty much.
What's funny is that, because when I knew we were going to talk about this, and before I started watching it, I'm like, okay, what would I want to, like, you know, you're a musician, so I want any chance we can get to talk about music.
Yeah.
And, you know, I thought about this movie and I'm like, oh, right, you know, the part where they sing, not even knowing like, oh, Dmitri Tiomkin did this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember like, oh, is there music in it?
Yeah.
Is this one of the movies where like there's no music?
Right.
And I'm watching it with my ear for the music.
Yeah.
And like 10, 15 minutes in,
it's one of those stylized choices that at first I was not on board with. Because I'm in this movie and it's all pretty realistic, right? And then that scene happens and I'm just like, okay, so just so I know that I'm watching a movie with Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson, I get it.
Yeah.
But they're not themselves outside. They're dude in Colorado, okay? So the fact that they both have these incredible singing voices is just kind of, I don't know, man, it's just like incongruous. It feels weird.
Did it not work for you?
It didn't in that moment.
Okay.
And I remember taking notes and I was like, this just feels weird. And then I really had to like think about it, and it was sort of like this reprieve from all their pain and all their things that are going wrong. And it's like this moment that can't be touched.
Right.
It's this, and it really brings them together, to be honest, because Brennan's like, play something I can, right. You know, and he wants to, and in retrospect, it grew on me, but I remember feeling like it was, I don't know what it was about it. And I get that it's like a Western thing.
Yeah.
I think, but that's something that I've never been a huge fan of.
I don't know, like I feel like I'm a sucker for it, but, because I know, like, there's a moment in the middle of it where you're like, oh my God, like this, I bet everyone else but me thinks this is the corniest thing in the world, but I can't, I love it so much. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, I feel like movies today like need to take advantage of, like, just have a moment where people sing, like, just do it.
Right.
But I think what makes that scene work is Walter Brennan. Like, I feel like if it was just Ricky Nelson and Dean Martin's doing it, it would be like, oh, you had Dean Martin and you had Ricky Nelson. You better give the audience what they want. They want to see them sing. And there's a little bit of that.
It's like Hawks being economical, though. It's like, listen, I've got these two guys, and I read that that's exactly what he was like. I have these two singers. Why not? It would be a crime to not use this.
But the fact that Brennan is there and he's got the harmonica, it's like it ties it into the scene more than if it was just like, hey, we're gonna have a sing-songy now. And the fact that, like, you know, if John Wayne joined in, you knew, like, it was like, oh, I can't buy this at all. Right. Like, you can't do that.
You know, John Wayne was, as far as his acting, he was an incredible listener.
Yeah.
If you watch how acutely he listens to people, his reactions are amazing. They're not forced, they're very natural, they inform his next line, much in the way Robert Redford did. They're very similar listeners.
And I think, like, the payoffs to some of the best moments of this movie, where like you see a character do something and completely redeem themselves, or completely like Dean Martin when he figures out that the guy is up on the thing.
Blood-stained beer glass.
You know, those moments work so well because they do cut to Wayne and him acknowledging it. You know, he's never going to go up to Dean Martin and be like, "Hey, you did a great job."
Right,
But the way, like, you know that just by the look of his eyes and the twinkle in his eyes, that it's like, you know, I respect the hell out of you for that. And that means more than, you know, him coming up and saying it. It's like the great scene in the movie where, you know, he's giving Dean Martin a hard time, and Walter Brennan comes over and is like, you know, what, you know, how do you put up with this? And it's like, if he didn't do that, then I'd worry. Yeah,
exactly, exactly. You know, we haven't talked at all about this being an anti-High Noon. It's just interesting.
You know, I think Westerns in particular, and, you know, John Wayne and John Ford and Howard Hawks, and they're all, I think, misunderstood and misappropriated to being Republican films and Republican ideals. And I know there's a way you can take it there and you can see that, but I really think like the lore of the High Noon thing was that they hated the fact that it was this liberal stance, and that it was someone making a film saying that it was okay that I name names. Whereas I think the main beef that John Wayne and Howard Hawks had with it was that if you're the sheriff of a town and there's people that are coming to kill you, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But there's something about going to, you know, that everyday farmer and saying, "Hey, pick up your gun and help me with this." That just, it's like...
See, I didn't quite agree with what I read about... It was just such a typical, like, stance of like, no, you gotta, like, you can't be showing your inner conflict, and you can't be showing that, and you know, he ended up being saved by his wife, as if that was a weakness. And I just didn't. I don't know.
That's the problem. Like I can get on board with, like, you know, no, like don't ask the, you know,
you don't want
the
to
poor
look
guy
like,
that doesn't know how to defend himself.
And you don't want to look like you're falling apart when you're the sheriff. I get it. Put on a brave face, be that, but it's like...
But there's nothing wrong with, like, so his wife saved him. It's like, well, great, you know. Thanks, wife. Like, what's the big deal with that? Like,
I just think it's okay to have a more human approach, and it's not like this imperturbable, you know, typical John Wayne character. It's like, no, and you know, and it's a...
Because, like, I don't think there's never a point in the movie where he's like, "No, I don't want your help because I'm going to do it alone because I'm a big, strong man and I do things alone." Like, I don't see where that was the thing.
I can't remember. Was he annoyed that they had to help him when Angie Dickinson and when they helped him in that one moment?
No, I think he throws it away with, like, you know, like one of his smart-ass digs, but I don't think like he was like, you know, I mean, I think he was like, "Thank you." But he didn't say thank you because, you know, he's John Wayne. He's not going to say thank you. But I think, like, that's one of those things. It's like without hesitation, Ricky Nelson is like, "Hey, throw that thing out the window." It's not like he was like, "Hey, you're a woman, you can't do anything right, so don't help me." You know, I'll throw the thing out the window and then I'll come out. It's like, "Hey, you're there. I need your help. Help me." That's where I think, like, that camaraderie, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter, which is weird. Which is weird when I read the thing about how they were upset that the wife had to help Gary Cooper, and I don't think, like, I think Bogdanovich said this, where it's like, you know, when he mentioned it, that he's like, you know, I had no problem with the movie, I had no problem with the director. I had no problem with Gary Cooper. I love Gary Cooper, and I thought his performance was great. There was just some little thing about...
Well, John Wayne helped run the writer out of the country, I was reading.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, just an interesting time, you know? I mean...
Yeah. See, that's the thing. It's not going to be a popular opinion, but I feel like when I watch these films, and I love these films, it's like the less I know about behind the scenes stuff, the better.
Right.
That's why I will never read how Singing in the Rain was made, because I don't want Gene Kelly's reputation, or like, you know, the magic that's happening on screen to be tainted by how much of a ass he was.
Right, very true.
Let's talk about Angie Dickinson.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, there's moments when I was like, she's stealing the film. It was a constant back and forth between her and Martin for who was stealing the film, in my opinion. You saw so much about her character in her line delivery. I mean, it was like she was concealing so much about her unhappiness, you know, but revealing it at the same time. It was this like brilliant, like just.
And I do love that, like, you know, one of the things, like when I was in college and I was studying different films, and like we had this American genres class, and the first one was dealt with Westerns. And one of the things like that I learned was that, like, you know, there's always these two representations of a female. There's the, you know, there's the school teacher that's in from the East, and, you know, she's blonde, and she's, you know, she represents the wholesomeness and the purity of civilization. And then there's the saloon girl, who's, you know, usually fair-skinned, had the dark hair and everything, and, you know, she was closer to the Western hero than the school teacher.
Right.
But the Western hero loves the school teacher.
Right, and the Western hero has fun with the saloon girl, but really never extends the respect to her or stamp of integrity that he would, which I think the saloon girl acts like it doesn't affect her, but it definitely does.
Does.
Yeah.
And this was interesting in the fact that it's, you know, it's not even really both put into one. It's just saying, like, hey, there's nothing wrong with the fact that I'm a saloon girl. I know what I am, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And, you know, and with John Wayne, it's just like, you know, just stop being an idiot.
Right.
And know that I have feelings for you, and you have feelings for me, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh man, their chemistry is so potent. It's one of my favorites ever, of chemistry between
like the back and forth, the byplay, and it's funny. Like it really is funny, and it's really genuinely warm.
And they don't really hold back on like the, you know, the sexual references, because she's basically like, I'm gonna leave my my door open for you. You know, it's pretty obvious, but you know.
I love the moment when he wakes up and he opens the door and he realizes that she's been standing out keeping watch.
Yeah.
And then he carries her into the room. I mean, it's such a great moment.
Yeah.
There's so many things in this movie. Like, you know, one of the points of this show is to have, like, you know, we hate saying this word, you're an artist, I'm an artist, like we try to do artistic things. What's the value of these films? Like, what, as a filmmaker or as a storyteller, like, why watch this film? What can you take from it? What do you think?
I think that what you can take from it is sort of just the idea that don't ever give up. If you're the sheriff, don't ever stop trying to uphold the mission that you set forth of protecting this town. If you're Dean Martin, don't give up. And you have people around you that are supporting you. Just keep going. You can reclaim your previous greatness. It's still in you. Angie Dickinson, don't give up. You're going to be able to find love. You're going to, you know, it's whatever you're looking for. If you want it, it's there. And Walter Brennan, he's older. I'm sure he's got fear of death. He's getting to the end of his life, but it's like he has a family. You know, if he wants it, he has a family here. And it's like, I think that just that idea of it's always worth just keep putting your next foot forward, you know, which is sort of how Hawks made films, in my opinion. It's like, do what you have to do to get to that next moment. Whether it's take from yourself, I mean, he remade this twice, right? You know, I mean.
Yeah. He has such a clarity of vision, and he knows exactly, like, you know you're in good hands, and you know everything that you're seeing is going to pay off. Even when there's a moment where you're thinking like, geez, there's a lot of sitting around. Like,
it's a pretty methodically paced film for the first half hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really like, you know, and I had no problem with it. I'm just like, and sort of, even though there was violence in the opening scene of the film, you don't really feel that kind of pervasive threat until Wheeler is killed. Right. Because the tone of the film changes.
Right.
It's a very overt kind of shift. You're not just watching a regular Western. This is a filmmaker. This is like, not to say, you know, it just kind of differentiates it from like the odors. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, no, this is a film, a serious film.
Right.
This is not set in a Western town.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and the fact, like, the casting of Ward Bond in that part, like, that is what makes you go like, oh, geez, like, really, like, we're in a movie where Ward Bond just got killed.
You take one of the best Western actors of all time and make him expendable.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
His performance in The Searchers is, I mean, one of the best ever.
One of the big lessons for me with this film is, so the opening scene. Hawks had this thing where he said, I always like to see how far I can get in a story without dialogue. And the opening scene is like, it's such a beautifully constructed, choreographed, silent film. With nothing, like, you just
because all the stakes are communicated non-verbally.
You know, the guy is laughing at dude, he throws the thing in the spittoon, and, you know, dude has this moment where it's like, am I really going to be the, yes, I am. And he goes in for it, and then John Wayne kicks it out. He looks up. We have one of those low angle shots because you got to see the way John Wayne is looking at him. Right. And he's looking down at him with like this look of just disappointment and disgust. And then he reacts. He punches John Wayne, or he hits him with the log. It's like, you know.
I mean, that's your introduction to their friendship.
Right.
If that doesn't describe the state of things, I don't know what does.
Right. And then, you know, and everything, like, everything just goes from that, and it's like, it's just a perfect opening scene. And like, and you always think, like, when you're writing, it's just like, you know, oh God, I got to get this information out, and how else am I going to do it without?
You know, nothing felt expositional. It really felt like you're a fly on the wall in a real place, watching events unfold. It's been going on before you got there, and it's going to go on after you leave. And that's very hard to do, and not have it feel like a film, like you're watching a film. Or
like, you know, the movie starts and you're just like, well, who's that person? Why is he hitting back? Why?
Right.
There's never a moment where
it's almost like a play.
Yeah.
It has that level of detail, that level of character, you know, construction.
And again, I think if you can write a scene in there where people's saying, like, just do it. But I don't know. It's hard because I feel it's one of my top 5 favorite Westerns. I don't think it's ever gonna, as much as I love it, I don't think it's the greatest Western.
You know, I thought it was an interesting take. I was going to try to do some trivia at the end in honor of Lincoln, but this is one thing that I noticed. I was reading that Sight and Sound, the publication, they ended up saying in 2012 that it was the second best Western of all time, yet they didn't initially review it. It wasn't even on their radar. So it's just interesting how things it's like wine.
Yeah.
You know, you really notice over the time. Sometimes things are ahead of their time. You don't even realize it.
Well, and that's the thing, like, that they mentioned, like, there's that, you know, in 1959, this movie opens, and it kind of comes and goes, like, no one really...
Well, it's like French New Wave. Think about the things that were happening at that time. It was like kind of competing against, you know?
But then in the 60s, with like people like Coppola and De Palma and Scorsese were in, like, they're like, oh...
You can see how Milius and all those guys and Coppola were very enamored, and Scorsese were enamored of a guy like Hawks. You know, just the gusto, and Peckinpah's the same way. It's just like you just feel like if they weren't making films, they'd be rustling crocodiles. You know what I mean?
Especially Milius. The Tarantino too this is one of his top 3 favorite films. And he said that when he made Jackie Brown, like, that he wanted to make his Rio Bravo, like he wanted to make, like, he wanted to take like a crime film and just say, like, hey, let's just hang out with these characters and get to know them in a very intimate way.
He was so enamored of Hawks and Sturges that apparently in Pulp Fiction, in his screenplay, he writes like His Girl Friday-esque dialogue for this, you know, the Jackrabbit Slim scene, and then the Sturges here. And, I mean, that's the thing, you know, to write, they say you got to read. It's the same thing with film. You gotta watch films. If you don't, it's like, I mean, how do you know what worked and what didn't?
That happened like in college. I think it was either my first year or second year. We were in class, and a kid said to the teacher, he's like, you know, because like we went around the room, and it was like it was the introduction of the class. So it was like, go around the room, just like list off a couple of your favorite movies, you know, what you like about film, blah blah blah. Yeah. We get to this one kid, and he's just like, you know, he's like, I don't know, I don't really like movies. I don't have a favorite movie. Do you think that, like, if I take a film school class and if I want to be a filmmaker, do I need to love movies? It's like, well, it sure will help. Yeah. Because I don't know what you're doing here.
Right. I mean, yeah.
I think it's the best thing about making movies is just, ooh, I'm going to do that because it means like it's from this, but I'm not, you know, wink, wink. Like,
well, I think subtle homages are great because you're not stealing. You're reappropriating something in a way that fits into your narrative.
Right.
You can't steal a predominant literary theme. You can't. That's not stealing. Those are things. Those archetypes, things like that. No, they're there to be used.
And I think you've got to figure out what it is you like. And then that's where you find your voice. Like, that's where like your own voice emerges, because it has no other choice but to do that. But you got to devour as much as possible and just be like, you know, I kind of like this, but I don't know if I really like it that much anymore. Like, I remember like when I was in film school and even getting out of college, like graduating, it's like nothing was better to me than 70s films. Like, I just love 70s films. Right. And now I'm in this new phase where it's like, nah, I mean, I love the 40s and I love the 50s. Like, I just love it so much. Yeah. And there's such a wealth of information and a wealth of influence that you can get from these films.
I think someone like Hawks is so great because he understands that there are no rules. Like, you learn the rules in order to break them. And you can't tell me that I can't have a noir scene in my Western or screwball comedy or whatever I want.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, and the great ones, they understand that. And they're not confined to their genre, and they understand that genre is literally a superficial stamp that's put on a film. It really doesn't define. The great, because this is a character study, so it doesn't matter where it's taking place, where it, you know, and you are going to watch those Westerns. Sci-fi has a similar hang-up, where there's the people that churn out sci-fi stories or churn out Western, you know, serial Westerns, right? And those can be enjoyable, but, you know, when you find someone who wants to enter that realm and say, oh, I want to make a very realistic human drama, but that's set in this, and I'll use the conventions here, but you know, it's interesting how like it's very clearly like a you know, a sound stage, and they've got all this like, right, but it finds a way to transcend that and make it very beautiful, even feeling at first like it's very conventionally structured as far as production design. Right. You know?
And I think part of that is because they have these characters that aren't so conventional, and you really get to sit down with them and hear their story and get so soaked up, like just sucked into their story, that all that other stuff is just like, yeah, well, that's just the scenery. I don't.
Well, you know, a lot of that is a testament to the acting, because the writing is great, but without actors that can properly execute your vision, you know,
you got nothing.
Yep.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, me too, man.
This was part 1 of season 5 with new co-host Devon Ewalt. There's going to be a few changes, but a lot of great special guests this season. We're going to be doing a Main Street Landing presentation, and we're going to be showing King Kong on the big screen, so that's going to be awesome.
And watch Rio Bravo if you haven't seen it.
It's amazing. There's so much to take from it, and even if you're not, watching it to be influenced by, just watch it because it's one of the most entertaining films ever. And it's such a great time.
It's great to be on board, man.
It's great to have you.
Yeah.
All right. Tune in next time.